Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar, which is about some tips and tricks about how to join data and services into FME, Microsoft FME Azure. My name is András Révész. I joined OneSpatial last year, and I brought about 10 years of FME experience with me. Mainly from the public sector organization, where we could use FME for good because of the wide range of systems and the data sources that we use. About OneSpatial, we are a leading global Platinum partner of Safe Software and reseller of FME. Since 1999, we honed our technical expertise in FME products, and our certificate consultant help us, our customers, who benefit from over 50 years worth of experience in the field of geographical information. We work closely with Safe Software to ensure you get the very best value of your FME products. So today, I'm going to talk about Microsoft Azure services and data sources. I start with Azure related readers and writers. It will be a short one. Most of the demonstration, I will talk about Azure transformers and also the HTTP caller. FME comes with a handful of customized Azure readers. The most well-known is SQL database for Azure. It comes in both non-spatial and spatial flavors, and also with the JDBC and the normal OLE database drivers. So it is if you prefer to use the OLE driver, then it is worth to install the latest version of the native client or SQL Server Management Studio for added benefits and for the latest features. There are a handful of more Azure readers and writers for data warehousing and non-SQL. And apart from that, there are readers and writers which are not typically Azure related, but they can use in Azure environments. For example, the PostgreSQL and the PostGIS readers and writers can be used in almost every PostgreSQL for almost every PostgreSQL, either in Azure hosted the Azure database for PostgreSQL or the PostgreSQL flexible server. And the normal Microsoft SQL Server reader and writer can also be used for Azure, but it is a better practice to use the customized Azure reader writers, even they use the same drivers, so the native client. So what I'd like to talk more about, it is the transformers. FME comes with a few Azure related transformers. They are interfaces to Azure APIs and services. They are not part of the installation. They are packages which are downloaded from the FME hub at the first use. These packages may contain multiple transformers. So this means that if you start to use one transformer, another may be downloaded. Example, the computer vision comes with the text analytics, and also the storage transformers come all together. So how they work, every transformer has some settings or parameters. One of them is the credential source or account or connection parameters. They are based on a specific web connection, and the web connection can so based on the web connection you can create your own named connections. The different transformers comes with a different set of authentication parameters. So for example, the cognitive services, which is the text analytics and the Azure compute connection, they need an endpoint and an account key, but the other transformer, like the service bus connector, it needs just a single connection string. So how to set them up? As everything in Azure, you need to install, to add the service behind. These services change time to time, so where they can be found. So the best is to use the search box in Azure portal. So for example, for the text analysis, it is in the language services now, and adding a text analysis service. It is very similar to any other Microsoft Azure service addition. It doesn't require too much information, just which subscription to use, in which resource group, so in which region, and just give a name to the service. What is important to have a look at always, it is the pricing, because services may be expensive, but this case, fortunately, there are free requests. There are other settings like network identity tags. Now I leave it at the default, but in a production environment, they must be properly set. When the service is added, it appears in the appropriate resource group. Now we need to find out the connection parameters, which we know that it is an endpoint and a key. So if we look at the settings of the service, then we can easily find that it is probably the keys and the endpoint. And actually, yes, so using the endpoint and any of the keys, it is possible to create a named connection from the web service. So I put together a small workspace to demonstrate it. I use the text analytics connector, and I do two queries. One of them is a language detection, and the other is a sentiment detection. The workspace requires a single parameter. It is the text to analyze. I prefer to copy the parameters to attributes. So the first attribute is the parameter, and after that, when the feature goes through the first text analytics connector, which is the language detector, it adds the three subsequent attributes. So the language name, the language code, and as well confidence. I copied over the input text from a Finnish news site, and the 92% confidence. So it looks like that it is a reasonably Finnish website. The second connector, so it carries out a sentiment detection. It needs a language input, so and this is why I added the language detection at first. It also adds the outcomes, so the sentiment itself and what is the sentiment value. So in this case, it is a number between 0 to 1. 0 is the most negative and 1 is the most positive. So it seems as it is quite a negative paragraph. I also added a HTML report generator and a HTML writer. so it can be used in FME Flow. And now I would show that what is uploaded to FME Flow when these connectors are used. So uploading the workspace. At the next step, so if the workspace has not been uploaded, then it asks that what is the, so if we want to upload the named connection, the named connection can be managed in FME Flow, and also the belonging web service is also uploaded, which can also be managed in the latest versions of FME. Also, you need to upload the package itself if it is not already uploaded, but unfortunately the package cannot be managed in FME Flow, unlike in FME form, where there is an option in the tools to manage the packages. Finally, when I uploaded, I set the data streaming as service. So this means that I could create a workspace app, and the workspace app as the workspace, it requests just a text to analyze. And when it is finished, then it provides a report. There is another useful transformer. It is the OneDrive connector. So with this OneDrive connector, you can upload data. So upload files, download files, also delete, and you can list the contents of a folder. This connector also requires authentication, and this account is also related to a web service. So this connector is part of FME, so it doesn't require any download, and it has an inbuilt web service. When you want to create a name connection from the web service, it doesn't ask anything. Clicking the OK, it forwards you to the Microsoft sign-in. After Microsoft sign-in, well, the authentication is not always successful because it requests the consent of a few things that you may or may not be able to do depending on the settings of the Azure environment. In this case, I used my corporate login, but the web application is created by Safe Software, and our settings don't allow me to consent to provide this data. But fortunately, it is possible to overcome with it. So the OneDrive connector transformer is based on the Graph API, which is a large API providing a lot of services I will talk about later. The Graph API is authenticated by the OAuth 2.0. It is an authentication. It is an open authentication protocol, and it works based on tags and tokens. And in OAuth, the tokens that enables the client to use the service is separated from the authentication. So the user is not authenticate themselves to the service, but to another authentication service. So how does this work? The user initiates to use the service or API or app, and the service forwards them to a login page. So this is what we could see in as the Microsoft login page. And behind the Microsoft login page, it is the Azure Active Directory, or the newer name, the Azure Entra ID. If the authentication is successful, the user gets an access token that he can use to utilize the service, and the refresh token. So the authentication token is a relatively short-lived token. It lasts for half an hour or 2 hours or something like that. Before the expiry, the user or the client needs to go back to the authentication service, this case the Entra ID, and using the refresh token, they can request a new authentication token, which will work with the service as well. So how the configuration needs to be done? In Azure, there is a requirement to create an app registration. The app registration is a setting that contains everything that needs to be in order for the authentication. So the application ID is just an ID for the app registration. There is a client secret, which is a secret that sometimes is required. There is a redirect URL. So when someone gets to the login page, then it tells that where to redirect the user back to the service. There is a scope, which means that what the application can use, because the authentication is not just an authentication, but an authorization as well. And finally, sometimes a tenant ID is also required, which is a kind of organization ID. When the app registration is ready and we have all the parameters, then in FME, it is possible to create a web service. The web service needs exactly the same parameters, so if any of them is different, then the web service won't work. If the web service registration is successful, then users can log in and they can create their own named connections. So how to set up this app registration and the web service in FME? Again, the app registration can be done in the Azure portal and in the Entra ID. In the Entra ID, at the same place as the user and the group registration, there is an app registration option. When you add a new app registration, the first step is quite straightforward. It requires a name, who can use the application. So it is the organization, another organization as well, plus anyone from the public, or just anyone from the public. So here you can set up the first one of the parameters, the redirect URL. In this case, there is no specific meaning. It can be anything but just a URL-like thing. So after clicking the register, it shows up a couple of more parameters, the application ID and the tenant ID or directory ID. We still need two more parameters, the client secret and the scope, or here it is called API permissions. So let's see the API permissions. These API permissions let you access to the different APIs or services or also. So now what we need is a Microsoft Graph API access. The Graph API provides the two kinds of permissions. One of them is the application permissions, which means that the application itself has all the permissions, and the application says that what you can access. And there's another one. It is the delegated permission. It is a really useful one because the application can access only those resources that the user who logged in can access anyway. There are a lot of permissions depending on because the Graph API provide lots of services, but there is a select, so there is a search box in the select permissions. For the OneDrive, in the permissions, it is called files, and what we need is the read write all. So this means that when we log in, we can access all our files and folders, so we can save, delete anything. There's another permission which is required. It is in the offline access. It can also be found among the delegated permissions. The user .read, it is a default permission when you set up the application. It is not really required, so it is up to you if you remove or not. And there is another step that needs to be done here. It is the grant admin consent. This is the one that when you log in, and after that the application requests your consent on all of these permissions or some of them. If your organization doesn't allow that you grant it, then you cannot use the web service. But granting the permission, this means that the application login won't ask about it. Finally, the API, so the certificates and secrets, you can set up the client secret. Adding a client secret is, so basically you need to set up that when it will expire. Unfortunately, this also means that you need to update the FME web service time to time. So it is worth to set as long as possible. And when you add the client secret, it is important that you copy the value because and save it, because if you navigate away, then you cannot see it anymore. So when the app registration is created, how to set up the FME web service. In the tools and the web connections, there is a button where you can manage the services. The web service behind the OneDrive connector is here. You can update the client ID, client secret, and redirect URL. But it is advised to create your own OneDrive web service for two reasons. One of them is that at an upgrade of FME, they are resetted back to the factory settings. And the other is that it is a multi-tenant and quite permissive web service. Your organization might not enable to use it. So on the bottom left side of the dialog, there is a create from. Based on the OneDrive web service, you can create your own web service. And the reason to create from the existing one and not from scratch is that in the OneDrive connector settings, when you want to create a new named connection, you can create it from the OneDrive web services. So if you don't create it from the existing one, you cannot select it. So the dialog is quite large, but so sometimes it might be enough to update the client ID, client secret, and the redirect URL. But in a corporate environment, if it is a single tenant app registration, then you need to update the other parameters as well. that the meaning of these parameters, there is a documentation at Microsoft. But here is that what you need to change. So one of them is you need to change the common, so the multi-tenant endpoint to your organization own, which is a replacement of the common to your tenant ID. So you need to remove the client secret from here because at a single tenant it is not required. And unfortunately, the refresh token parameter, so the request format is not working with the redirect URL setup on the top, so it must be set manually. Hopefully it will be solved later. So when every parameter is set and the apply button is clicked, there is a test button. At the test, you need to authenticate yourself, and if everything is okay, then you get a test succeed dialog. So now you can export the connection, the web service, and you can distribute it to your colleagues or employees, so they can use this web service and authenticate themselves. So setting up the OAuth and the web service, now you can use the OneDrive connector. But the Graph API provides a lot more services to mail, to calendar, to Excel. Also, you can use Teams, so you can send messages to the Teams channels. And also, you can access SharePoint and do a lot of things there. The range of the APIs in the graph is also, can be also found on Microsoft pages, and also a generic description how to use the API. So basically all documentation is available. So now setting up the Graph API and the OAuth, you can use the OneDrive connector. The Graph API provides a lot of other APIs. So you can programmatically use the mail, calendar, Excel, Teams, SharePoint, and some more. There is a documentation about the range of the services that can be accessed by the Graph API. And also there is a generic description how to use the API. So all documentation is available for any of the supported services. Compared to the OneDrive connector, it is very similar to set up any other services. What is different is mainly the app registration. So, and in the app registration, it is the API permission. With the API permission, you can selectively provide access to the services and the level of access. So it is read-only, or they can write or delete or other via the API permission. So I show an example how to do it and also how to use the HTTP caller to this case send a calendar event. So as I mentioned earlier, the difference from the OneDrive connector is that we need to access not to the OneDrive, but for the calendar. It is simply a different API permission. So instead of the file.readwrite.all, this calendar.readwrite that you need to add as an API permission. So when the app registration is done, now you can register the web service, and you can do this web service from scratch. It will show the same dialog as in case of the OneDrive web service. The difference is that it uses the calendar.readWrite as scope. Also change everywhere the common to tenant ID, and unfortunately in the refresh token parameters, the request format needs to be updated, both the redirect URL and also the grant type is called response type. So it needs to change to grant type. But if you copy these parameters and customize them, they will work. I also put together a small workspace for demonstration. The aim of this workspace is to create an event in my calendar. The workspace has a small number of parameters, so basically what the event should contain. The subsequent transformators create JSON, which is required by the API, the calendar endpoint. And if it is submitted with the proper connection string, then it will appear in the calendar. The HTTP caller settings is not too difficult. So there is a simple request URL. It is a post method. And after putting together the JSON, which is the representation of the event, and it is also documented in the API. So the only thing is the web connection that I showed how to set up. So another tip. So if you provide this workspace to others, then they would like to authenticate to their own account in Azure. You can do it by creating a parameter from the name connection. And the nice thing is that in the name connection, you can restrict that which web service can be used. So this means that the users can create their name connection based on that web service, and also if they have multiple connections, they can select the connections which are based on the web service. For example, here in the default value, but also if you add this parameter to the workspace parameters, then the users can only select or create name connections based on this web service. This is what I wanted to talk about today. Okay, thank you for your listening.